Good afternoon. The time is 5:33 p.m. on Friday, February the 21st, 2018, and this public meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is now called to order. The roll call will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. If you're ready, Mr. Hayward. If you're not, we wait.
President Williams.
Here.
Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
Ms. Carter.
Present.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan.
Present.
Ms. Wattenberg. Present. Dr. Woodruff.
Present.
Mr. Jones.
Present.
Mr. Weedon.
Present.
Mr. Batchelor. Mr. Batchelor. Ms. Rhodes.
Present.
Ms. Robinson.
Present.
Madam President, you have quorum.
A quorum has been determined, and the State Board of Education will now proceed with the business portion of this meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions?
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Jones?
I'd like to offer a motion to amend the agenda to include a resolution to recognize Peggy Cafritz and her accomplishments.
Are there any objections to the addition of a ceremonial resolution to honor Peggy Cooper Cafritz? Seeing none, it is added to the agenda. Are there other changes? Seeing no further changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
The motion is being properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is approved. Before I move to the minutes, I want to note that Ms. Wilson-Phelan will need to depart the meeting prior to adjournment and would like to participate in votes by phone. I would ask for unanimous consent to permit Ms. Phelan to vote by phone. Are there objections? Seeing no objections, Ms. Phelan, you may vote by phone. Okay. Members, we have the meeting of our February 7th working session before us. Are there corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. I will ask all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is approved. Good evening. My name is Karen Williams, Ward 7 Representative and President of the State Board of Education. On behalf of the members of the District of Columbia State Board of Education, I want to welcome our guests and our viewing public to our Wednesday, February 21st public meeting. The State Board typically holds its meetings on the third Wednesday of every month here in the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street, Northwest. 4 months ago, the Metro entrance closest to our building was closed for an estimated 10 months for escalator repair. The F Street exit of the Judiciary Square station is still open. If you plan to visit the State Board offices or attend one of our meetings, please plan accordingly. Today's agenda includes ceremonial resolutions honoring the achievements of district educators and leaders. We are pleased to recognize this year's Standing Ovation Award honorees tonight. We will be considering a resolution that would approve a new school report card for all district public and charter schools. The proposed content was developed over many months with significant cooperation between the Office of the State Superintendent of Education and the State Board. The proposal reflects input provided by the board's ESSA task force, individual board members, and importantly, the broader community throughout the process. I want to thank the superintendent and the hardworking staff of OSSE and the SBOE for ensuring the content proposal incorporates that feedback. The school report card is not a static item. We will continue to refine, change, amend, and update the report card based on information that parents need to make the best decisions for their children. In the past week, the Deputy Mayor of Education and D.C. Public School Chancellor resigned their role in moving the their role for moving the chancellor's daughter to a school without utilizing the process that all other district parents must follow. The resignations were the right answer, but not and get to the core of the problem. The fact remains that our schools are incredibly equal and inequitable. They provide in the education they provide some of our students. I hope that this event will prompt some difficult conversations about equity and equality that are long overdue in the district. We cannot fix our broken system if we continue to ignore the problems. The State Board is very pleased to welcome our colleagues from the District Department of Parks and Recreation tonight. DPR provides district residents with access to green space, recreation centers, swimming pools, and year-round programming for children and youth. DPR will be providing the board with information on how our constituents can get involved in activities across the district. I also want to give a special welcome to our newest SBOE staff member, Deborah Gibson, who joined us yesterday as an administrative support specialist. Ms. Gibson, we're very glad to have you on our team. Now, I will turn the floor over to our superintendent, Hansel Khan, for any opening statement she may have.
Thank you, President Williams and members of the board. As you know, OSSE will publish a new statewide school report card by December 2018 as required by the Every Student Succeeds Act. And since late last summer, OSSE has collaborated extensively with the State Board of Education, the State Board's ESSA task force, and community partners to develop a list of the content that will go on the report card. Tonight, the State Board of Education will vote on a resolution to approve the content of the report card. We have come a long way on this project. We have a much stronger product because of our collaboration. Specifically, I'm proud of our work to gather public feedback on the report card. This will assist us in ensuring that this tool responds to the needs of parents and family members. Through our efforts, we collected nearly 1,900 pieces of feedback on report card content. This has been the most extensive public engagement process that OSSE has had during my time, and I believe that it is a strong step in the right direction. In addition, you have pushed us to make changes to this content proposal, and we have incorporated much of your feedback. Tonight, I want to focus my comments on addressing our next steps on this important project. Once we come to agreement on the report card content, we will proceed to more discussions on report card design. At the February ESSA task force meeting, my staff presented on our next steps for obtaining feedback on creating a parent-friendly report card design. The task force provided helpful feedback on the types of questions that the public would like to be engaged on as it pertains to the design. We'll be launching another suite of tools in the upcoming months to obtain public feedback, and we'll be bringing those ideas back to the ESSA task force. We anticipate engaging the public on design throughout the spring. We also heard significant public feedback on teacher data and parent engagement, and we were able to deliver on many of the ideas that the public wanted. Further, as stated in the report card resolution that is being considered tonight, OSSE commits to continuing conversations with you and the ESSA task force on teacher data. I think that the future of teacher data requires more stakeholder input, including LEAs, school leaders, and teacher representatives. OSSE will also support conversations with family engagement experts on a parent engagement policy, as well as convene stakeholders representing the interests of our students with disabilities on report card metrics that are the most meaningful. It's clear that our work together is ongoing. We will need to evaluate the use of the report card over time and make improvements that are based on user feedback. As I noted, the content proposal that is before you tonight was developed through significant feedback from parents and deep engagement with all of you and the ESSA task force, and I urge the members of the State Board to approve the content proposal and the resolution before you.
Thank you, Superintendent. We appreciate you being here tonight. The State Board welcomes participation in activities under our authority. Excuse me. At every public meeting, we begin with testimony for public witnesses on education-related matters. Your comments will become part of our official record. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak at a future public meeting, please contact our staff at SBOE.dc.gov or by calling 202-741-0888. Tonight we have 4 witnesses. As I'll call your name, please come down to the table. Ms. Laura Fuchs, Merilyn Holmes, Sigourney Gray, and Carrie Rolling. Most of you know the drill, but I will say it anyway. You have 3 minutes to speak this evening. Please note that you must use your microphone. Your microphones are already on and ready. You will also see a timer on the upper right side of the witness table. The light will be green for the first 2.5 minutes, will turn yellow for the last 30 seconds, and will turn red after 3 minutes have elapsed. Please begin when you're ready. Ms. Holmes, you may start.
Good evening. It's great to be back here again with you. My name is Merilyn Holmes. I'm the president of Total Sunshine, Inc. We're a local nonprofit and also television show. We support the top graduates of our city. Our school grade incentive program is the program that we do it from. So far, we have supported more than 600 DC top graduates. That's valedictorians and salutatorians with laptops for college. Now, it has not always been laptops. It has been tablets. It's been used laptops. This year, our 10th annual ceremony event, we are hopeful that we're going to be able to provide our valedictorians and salutatorians with brand new laptops to go off to college with. I've gotten some notes from some of the young people that have gone on to college and they're in college, because we bring them onto the Total Sunshine team and we let them know that if they need help in college, if they run out of money for books, you know, our straight A students for 4 years, perfect attendance students, we tell them that we will be willing to assist them. Now, our school grade incentive program is not without its difficulties. I'll tell you, with all the tumultuous things going on right now with our education system and some of the issues people have been having, I think that it speaks volumes to see that every year it's a struggle for me to support the students that have gotten straight A's for 4 years, as well as have had great attendance. These aren't the young people that we're worried about doing the wrong thing. And so with that, I'll say our school grade incentive program is fantastic. We televise this ceremony every single year. This year is going to be June 14th. We have 70 students, 35 schools, public schools, charter schools. This is a citywide celebration of these young people and their diligent work and their excellence. You know, we used to, here's a picture of one of our ceremonies at Roosevelt High. When I first started this event, I thought that we would need an auditorium because it would be so filled with clapping hands that we would probably have to turn people away. This has not been the case. It was disappointing to me. We definitely downsized on the location, but I'm hopeful that some of our people that are here me today will listen up and will help me to support our young people, the straight A students, with brand new laptops to take on the way to college. They need them. They deserve support. They have earned this support from every single elected leader and every person that is proud of them. We always invite school administrators and teachers and of course the entire State Board of Education. Everyone sitting here today is welcome. We're excited. I always get excited about this thing. And I tell you, nowadays when February starts to roll around, I say, oh Lord, it's time for the struggle life. It's time to put my work boots on. I'm a paramedic, and this is why I started the Total Sunshine to start with. But either way, I'll close out by saying if someone wants to get more information about our school grade incentive program, they can go to totalsunshine.org or email me at info@totalsunshine.org. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak about this. I'm hoping for a great 10th annual this time around.
All right, I'm Laura Fuchs, and today I'm wearing my hat as the chair of the Washington Teachers Union Committee on Political Education. So I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for my organization. So I talked to many teachers, and we focused on special education because it kept coming up. Every time we talked about issues facing the city, special education rose to the top of the list across the board. What we're noticing is DC public schools is slipping back into old habits that have led to major lawsuits and takeovers in the past, and is sacrificing students' access to a free and appropriate public education in order to save money on budgets. We're seeing changes to IEPs being made to save money and promote a certain point of view, not necessarily what's in the best interest of the child. We're seeing the cutting of special education coordinators. We're seeing teachers having full caseloads and then going above that caseload when charter schools inevitably send us students who have incomplete IEPs. We asked for testimonies from some teachers, and frankly, most of them weren't willing to go on the record. But I do have a few stories that I'm going to share from educators who are not myself. This one's from Elliott Hine and Hart, educator of 8 years, and a Ward 6 resident. And they said one of the chief problems that we're seeing is the overtesting of our students, because it is robbing students of real-world experiences, and students are then being unprepared for higher education on account of this obsession. They said in their classroom they have test after test after test throughout the year, and on top of this they have endless test preparation, and this is especially inappropriate for our students with special needs. A Banneker High educator of 18 years, 24 years total teaching experience from Ward 1, said that impact further exacerbates this problem because of its authoritarian style and the fear-driven adherence to curriculum, LEAP, TASK, CSC, and a million other initiatives. Creativity and passion are not a priority. Students are spending weeks testing, and they're not reading as much as they used to. A 10-year highly qualified educator in Ward 7, who is a special educator, said the lack of funding for special education classes and students is the primary issue facing our students. Autism programs are being cut, so class sizes are increasing. Teachers are not getting access to the visual resources and other manipulatives in order to teach students. She says our students are experiencing greater distractibility, therefore less learning is going on. She's seen increases in repetitive speech and self-stimulatory behavior. Students have a lower quality of life if this is not remedied, and students are not being taught the coping skills to deal with these stressful situations. And so we need to honor the class size limits set in the W-2 contract, which are currently not being honored. An educator for 2 years at Elliott Hine, but who has 14 years of teaching experience, says that, they've seen some of our special education students are not receiving services in their classrooms that aren't English or math. I've seen that as well. Social studies is rich with intriguing and dynamic texts and inquiries based on solutions of lower reading. Lower comprehending students do not have access to if they're not receiving their services, and that this is a daily phenomena in the classroom, and students are being robbed of engaging in debate, higher level questions, solutions, and options to use when they learn to inform special education independently. I'll just conclude there, but we just want to open up a conversation on this issue, kind of like we did on the graduation issues here at the State Board. We're using this as an opportunity to begin a conversation and hope that we can continue it as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Rolling. I am a teacher and parent here in the DC public school system. I'm here. I've got 16 years experience teaching English to speakers of other languages. I currently teach 6th grade English Humanities at Oyster Adams Bilingual. I'm here because I'm a teacher and a mom, and I've seen what happens when dyslexia is and is not diagnosed. Let me explain. Research shows that 20% of the population has some degree of dyslexia. In DCPS with 50,000 students, that's about 10,000. That's 5 students in every classroom of 25. I teach 70 students. 4 of my students are officially diagnosed dyslexic, but the math shows that there are probably 10 others struggling. Okay. Pediatricians are usually the first line of consultation, but they may give outdated or misinformation on dyslexia. Our own pediatrician, my own son is dyslexic. This pediatrician was actually married to an educational psychologist, and he said we needed to wait until 3rd grade to diagnose, and that's absolutely against the research. My principal has sent several teachers to workshops and conferences on dyslexia, but we need a district-wide plan to support local efforts and individual teachers. And without a system-wide plan, we will not identify most cases of dyslexia. Teachers do not easily recognize dyslexia because of the many myths that still permeate. The truth is that dyslexics are really smart, and their grades may not be low enough to qualify for SPED. Dyslexics do learn to read. It just takes longer and a lot more energy. Dyslexics are creative, social, empathetic, outside-the-box thinkers. They are your ideal citizens. So with all these gifts, why should schools care about diagnosing dyslexia? Well, undiagnosed, the negative impact on education and self-esteem is significant. Too many dyslexics have attendance problems or eventually drop out. Those who receive the official diagnosis of dyslexia, unfortunately, usually come from affluent families that can afford $3,000 psychological testing. Sadly, those who can't afford the testing often self-diagnose as stupid. Undiagnosed dyslexia can inspire the most severe behavior problems and classroom disruptions as students strive to maintain their dignity. And teachers mistakenly think these students are lazy when really they're working harder than anyone else. Remedies. We need a system to identify students. We already have several useful screeners that the district owns and uses. We just are not using them intelligently. Second, we need to make sure these students receive additional time with programs that the district already owns. We just need to use them strategically. And third, students need access to audiobook technology to keep up with reading assignments and acquire vocabulary at the pace of their peers. And last, all teachers, every subject, need a basic knowledge of dyslexia. And this can be accomplished within a single day of professional development. Finally, Ward 4 Councilman Brandon Todd has a bill that will pilot programs that will do many of the things that the research recommends. We should encourage the passage of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for testifying. Yes.
Madam President, do we have Ms. Fuchs' full written testimony, or could she provide that to us so that we could send it to the Education Committee?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was really busy today. I will write it up and send it in.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, Mr. Batchelor is calling in and he would like to participate in the vote by phone. I would ask for unanimous consent to permit Mr. Batchelor to vote by phone. Are there any objections? So moved. Next on our agenda is the consideration of a ceremonial resolutions. We will consider both of the ceremonial resolutions and take a short recess to allow for presentation of the resolutions to the honorees. We will begin with the resolution recognizing the honorees of the Standing Ovation Awards. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? Having properly been moved and seconded, Mr. Haywood will read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education resolution to commend the 2018 Standing Ovation and Rubenstein Award winners, CR 18-3. Whereas it is the vision of the District of Columbia State Board of Education that all District of Columbia students are taught by excellent educators and attend high-quality schools. Whereas each year, DC Public Schools recognizes teachers, administrators, staff, and schools that embody excellence in education through the Standing Ovation Award and Rubenstein Award. Whereas the 2018 Standing Ovation Excellence Award winners are, for Principal of the Year, excuse me, Tania Pritchard, Whittier Education Campus. Teacher of the Year, Tamika Coleman, Walker Jones Education Campus. School Staff Member of the Year, Emily Allshouse, Brightwood Education Campus. Excellence in School Innovation winner, Cynthia Robinson Rivers, Van Ness Elementary School. Excellence in Service winner, Jessica Silva, Marie Reed Elementary School. Excellence in Classroom Innovation winner, Kareem Farah, Eastern High School. Excellence in Family Engagement winner, Greg Doman, Jefferson Middle School Academy. Excellence by an Academic Leadership Team winner, Truesdale Education Campus. Whereas the 2018 Rubenstein winners for excellence in leadership are Principal Mary Ann Stinson, Truesdale Education Campus, Principal John Burst, School Within a School, Principal Donald Bryan, from 2001 to 2007. Whereas Ms. Cooper Cafritz served the district and the nation through her roles on the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts Board of Trustees, as the vice chair of President Bill Clinton's Commission on the Arts and Humanities, and as the co-chair of the Smithsonian Institution's Cultural Equity Committee. And whereas she was a dedicated civil rights activist who challenged segregation and championed racial and social justice. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education recognizes and honors the life and legacy of Peggy Cooper Cafritz, her significant contributions to the District of Columbia, and her impact on generations of students.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the board for considering honoring the work of Miss Peggy Cooper Cafritz in Washington, D.C. She was a tireless advocate for education, but not only for all as she did, but for the families that did not have access. Peggy Cooper Cafritz had a privileged life early in her life, but she learned the advocacy for education when her brother was not admitted into a all-white Catholic school. And her father sent her to boarding school in Indiana because he felt that education, no matter at what level and what school, should be afforded to all children. And Peggy continued that effort. I had the honor and privilege to work for Peggy in running and managing her first campaign for the presidency of the school board, which is the first and only president, well, no, not only, the second, there was two, but the first president elected by the citizens of the city for the school board. Of course, we all know her history with co-founding Duke Ellington, but the city leaders that knew her said she was just dogged and would not take no for an answer when she wanted to create a school for the arts. Peggy also taught me a great deal of tolerance. When I worked for her, she had a very non-traditional campaign. She rented an office at Nellie's, the whole building, the restaurant, for her campaign. And she welcomed all. And my first instinct when I went to work for her, I said, well, Peggy, I can't work for you here because it was all over the place. But Peggy was smart. She said, Mark, just be patient. And she said, we've got to figure out a way to bring this all together and all the people from different backgrounds, and it'll work. And she was right. So I learned a great deal from her, and tolerance is probably one of the biggest things that I learned from Peggy. She was just getting ready to embark on her book tour in the next couple of weeks. So I want to thank the board for considering it, and Peggy Cooper Cafritz was a tireless educator in this city. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. I knew Peggy Cooper Cafritz, and she was one of my role models, so thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion on the resolution? If there is no additional discussion, the motion is on the approval of State Board Ceremonial Resolution 18-4. All in favor, say.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is approved. The State Board will now take a 5-minute recess. If the standing ovation honorees and representatives from the DC Public Education Fund that are here tonight could join us in the well of the board, we will meet you there. The board stands in recess. It's not open, it's okay.
So if you all could.
Thank you, John Paul.
Move your way down here, and we're all going to gather.
Phone blew up.
As it literally.
Let's have some of the board members sit.
So this is my personal phone, but I know some others said they were calling me on, couldn't reach me. So that was my.
So you had 4 board members seated. Karen, you could sit. And then everyone else gather in real tight. Yeah.
Yeah, push your way forward. Use your elbows.
All right. Is everyone ready? Okay. Out of here. All right. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
The meeting comes back to order. School report cards are a vital tool for parents and students to learn about the district, public, and public charter schools. The content proposal that is before the state board today is a result of a dynamic community input. Okay, excuse me, again. Process that was more open and transparent than any other policy decision-making that I can recall. The proposal will provide much more information about our schools to the public than is available today, and will do so in consistent manner across education sectors. For the first time, parents will not have to search across multiple platforms and agencies to gather information before making their decisions. I would like to turn this part over to Dr. Lynette Woodruff, representative from Ward 4 and chair of our ESSA task force, to make a motion on the resolution.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Having been properly moved and seconded, Mr. Haywood will read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education resolution to approve the content and format of the District of Columbia School Report Card, SR 18-3. Whereas the Every Student Succeeds Act, 20 U.S. Code 6311H, ESSA, requires state education agencies and local education agencies to develop annual state and local report cards that are concise, presented in an understandable and uniform format that is developed in consultation with parents, communicated in language that parents can easily understand, and made widely accessible to the public. Whereas the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, in fulfilling its obligations with ESSA, will publish a statewide report card that reports data in December 2018 at the state, LEA, and school levels. Whereas pursuant to DC Code 38-2652A12, the State Board of Education shall approve the categories and format of the report card. Whereas the public demands robust and centralized information on the performance and offerings of all public schools in the District of Columbia, and previous iterations of report cards have been confusing, inaccessible, decentralized, and not friendly for their primary audience, parents. Whereas the State Board of Education established an ESSA task force that is charged to advise the SBOE on policy matters related to the implementation of ESSA that fall in its purview, including state report cards. Whereas the State Board of Education and its ESSA task force consulted with OSSI to develop resources to facilitate public engagement on the content of the report card and engaged members of the public to gather feedback. Whereas through their joint collaboration and efforts, OSSI received nearly 1,900 pieces of feedback between September 15, 2017 and December 15, 2017. Whereas OSSI presented the State Board of Education and its ESSA task force with updates on public engagement efforts, which included the presentation of a preliminary content proposal in December 2017, a revised version of the content proposal in January 2017, and a final content proposal affixed to this resolution. And whereas significant revisions were made to the content proposal from its preliminary draft to final draft consistent with the public engagement feedback, the input from the ESSA task force, and feedback from members of the State Board of Education. Now therefore, be it resolved that the State Board of Education approves the content of the school report card as listed in the final content proposal affixed to this resolution. Be it further resolved that the State Board of Education approves as the school report card format an online tool that is also mobile-friendly and allows stakeholders to generate printable materials in multiple languages, including English, Spanish, French, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Amharic. Be it further resolved that OSSI will support further inquiry into teacher data to inform future report cards by collaborating with the ESSA task force and other education stakeholders to understand the community's data needs, as well as by evaluating OSSI's internal capacity to collect and present teacher data. Be it further resolved that in order to provide meaningful information to parents of students with disabilities, OSSI will convene stakeholders representing the interests of students with disabilities on data that pertains to this subgroup. And be it finally resolved that the OSSI will facilitate conversations with the ESSA task force, further engage family engagement experts, LEAs, school faculty, and other stakeholders in pursuit of establishing a high-quality engagement and dissemination policy.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Okay, is there a discussion on the amendment? On resolution?
I have an amendment, but is Lynette going to motivate it, or?
I don't.
No, just an amendment? Okay.
What I need to say, I say it now.
So first of all, thank you very much to the task force, to the ESSA task force, and to OSSI for their work and for their recommendations on this, and for taking into account many of the comments that were brought up by the community and by members of the State Board. I want to raise as an amendment one issue that I raised at the last board meeting and at previous meetings. That is the third and fourth amendments here, which I would move together. They really go together. It is a call to include in the 2019 report card a data point for each school on the level of teacher turnover. This issue has come up constantly. It came up last spring when we had discussions about ESSA. It's come up this spring in the community meetings on ESSA. It's come up at our board meetings. It came up when, and it's come up in the task force. We have one of the highest teacher turnover rates in the country, and according to an independent analysis, at high poverty schools, it is on average, not just in bad years, but on average, 1/3 of all teachers leave each year. Now, of course, schools always have teacher turnover. No school has zero teacher turnover. Teachers leave because they're pregnant. They leave because they get new jobs. They leave to join their family in other states. And they leave because they're counseled out or terminated because the job wasn't right for them or for other reasons. But when turnover is very, very high, parents deserve to know. Just as in the report card, we're going to give parents information on absenteeism and on, I think, on some technology issues, on health and health issues. Parents want to know what kind of health facilities there are at the school, whether there's a nurse. This is an extremely important issue for parents. For some parents, the stability of the school staff perhaps given instability in their own life, is one of the most important things that they may be looking for, and they ought to be able to find it on the report card. In addition, teacher turnover data is, for us, it's an alert system. It's a canary in the classroom, as I've called it. When it's very high, it tells us that something ought to be looked at. So with this amendment, we are asking OSSI to do the research necessary, because we understand it's not simple, to include this in the 2019 report card. And let me just say it's in two parts. The first part simply says that what's included here extends to the 2018 school report card, and that there will be further discussion, further proposals, and an opportunity for the State Board to make recommendations and vote on the contents of that by April 2019. I believe that is understood anyway. And then the key here is the final one. Is that correct? Okay. All right. So I therefore move those two amendments.
Are there any discussion on the amendment?
Yes, discussion.
Yes, Dr. Woodruff?
Thank you very much.
Point of order. Can we have them read into the record?
So amendments on your sheets would be labeled as 1, 2, 3, and 4, and from what I understand, it would be amendments 3 and 4 that are being considered together?
Yeah.
Okay. So in line 40, insert the following. Be it further resolved that this approval extends to the 2018 school report card content only, and that there will be further discussion, further proposals, and an opportunity for the State Board of Education to make recommendations and vote on the contents of the 2019 report card by April 2019. In line 44, insert the following. Be it further resolved that OSSI bring to the State Board of Education a proposal for including teacher turnover in the 2019 report card by December 2018, thus allowing sufficient time for the State Board of Education and OSSI to discuss and agree on a proposal. And Madam President, I believe you also need a second for the amendments.
So we need a second for the amendment to accept the discussion on the amendment?
Second for the discussion.
A second for the discussion. So
All right.
we're voting on, okay.
Dr. Woodruff?
Thank you. Thank you. I am in total agreement that we need to address teacher turnover. But I do believe that it's important that we are very careful that parents are not misled by incomplete data collection. We need to know why teachers leave. Move, pregnancy, military, maybe they're moving because the school climate or medical. It's important to know that data so that we can report accurately what's happening in our schools. Teacher data collection paints a picture of a school. It lets us know that there is high turnover in some schools. It also lets us know more than just the turnover, but the reason why. The reason why is extremely important, especially since there is a higher turnover in our schools that need stable teachers that have been there for a long time. In order to know why they're leaving, we need to gather that data so we can report it. Right now, we can say, yes, we know that a teacher leaves a school. But the reason why is just important. We need to have time to ensure that we can gather the data so that we can report it accurately to parents. We have an opportunity to do this. There's the ESSA committee, ESSA task force, that can assist, and OSSI sits on that committee with us. The dates in line 44, yes, amending them may be important if in that proposal, but they need to give a window, a time, so that we can say in a 3-year period, we've gathered data, we've collected it, we've had an opportunity for the ESSA task force and OSSI to work together on what data needs to be gathered according to what research is out there. And then once we have all that, well, let's start collecting it, yes, but let's report it 3 years from now so that we can say to the parents, well, yes, there was a high turnover, but that year, that school had a lot of military families, and that the teachers that were teaching there came and went with their spouse. Or, yes, this school had a high turnover because maybe the climate wasn't what it should be. But we can't know that, and we can't report accurately to parents if we just assume all teacher turnover is happening, and it sets this fire off in a school saying, oh my gosh, the school must not be working because there's teacher turnover. But if we don't know why, then we're not doing our parents a service here. We're not doing our families. And so there is a way we can get at this, and we just need to make sure that when we do this, we allow the time necessary to gather data that will not mislead our families here in the District of Columbia.
So I, in many ways, agree with your position, and I am supportive of however, I am supportive of the amendment. All points of data are point-in-time snapshots that are subject to interpretation, whether they're subject to interpretation by policymakers, us sitting here, or parents, another hat that I wear. I'll be going through the DC lottery next year and exploring high schools for my daughter. And when I do that, this is a data point that I would like to know, and we need to understand that it is a point in time and that it is subject to interpretation. But so are test scores. My daughter attends a school with 5% proficiency on Park. That's a data point that's subject to interpretation, and it shouldn't be a disqualifier for families. I think, if anything, the events of the last week tell us that we need to do a better job of looking at the data, using that data to identify issues, and then as policymakers, ensure that we're making the investments that we need to ensure that every school is appropriate and adequate to serve our students and an environment where our students can thrive. Ultimately, the teacher turnover, teacher stability is something that I have heard time and time again from parents that they want to have reported. And I see nothing here that limits the work of OSSI and the ESSA task force over the next year to come up with something that is valid, that is good, that paints a positive light around teachers and sheds some light. Again, it's a snapshot of time, and we need this data, but we need to make sure that we do it right, and I think we've got another year to do it right.
I would like to comment on what Joe said. I do agree that we need to do it right. I do again believe that data is very important. And I do again believe that I, as a parent, just like Joe, have children in the school system. But I do believe that I want to know as a parent that the turnover is not just happening because of whatever, but there is a reason why. And as a parent, I would like to know if the school is having turnover for different reasons. I know that I homeschooled, and when I homeschooled, I discovered that the turnover of parents was high in the homeschool only because 2 years later they had to leave because of the military. So that was important to me too, because my children had different friends every 2 years. So it's important to know why people leave. And even though we're tracking teacher turnover, are we addressing the why? And that's all I'm asking for, is that there is time to address the why. And a 3-year window of actually us coming up with, through the task force, along with OSSI, of what are the trigger whys that we're going to use, and gathering that data so we can report it accurately is important. And so that is, all I'm asking is that if we choose to move forward along or vote to move forward with line 44, or 2 and, 3 and 4, that we address the issue of a time frame. So it just doesn't happen with what we know now, and that is that teacher leaves, that a teacher leaves. But we know why teachers leave, and we need to be able to address that, but gather that data so we can. Thank you.
Karen, can I respond?
Yes, you have.
So I just want to respond to that because I think the information about why is important, but I think they're two different issues. I think there's the data point, the sort of the snapshot in time that Joe was speaking about for that go on these report cards, right? There's absenteeism data and there's teacher experience and so on, specific data points. That tells us how much. To know why, we would do the teacher climate survey, which as I understand it, is under construction right now, and I believe we're gonna get a report on it in not too long, and if I'm not mistaken, we're gonna have an option to consider that, whether that should go in the 2019 report card. Maybe the superintendent would like to comment on that. But I do regard these as two separate things. They're both very important, but they're not the same, and I think having, asking now in February 2018 for something to be ready in December 2019 is not unreasonable. Thanks.
Thank you, Thank you, Ms. Wattenberg.
And I'll just say, if there was a way to include the, if there was a way to sort of say we'd have the climate survey so that Lynette would feel better about that, that'd be fine too.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Madam President, through the president, I have some questions. I would imagine for my colleague in Ward 4, I want clarity on what she's requesting for the insert for line 44. That's the first thing. But the other, we have 4 amendments, so are we moving?
I was going to vote on those first.
Oh, you're voting on, so you can speak to which ones we're moving first if you.
So to clarify, the only ones that are on the floor right now are numbers 3 and 4, which are the last ones on your sheet.
Very good. That's that answer. So through you, if the my colleague in 4 can speak to, yes, what she's requesting, or if she's offered an amendment to line 44.
Yes, maybe I'm not following right procedure. Okay. Then I need to,
Mr. Jones, I believe the suggestion that came through via email earlier yesterday was to change the word in Amendment 4, the first reference to OSSI, to the ESSA task force. But I don't believe that's on the floor unless it's being requested as a friendly amendment.
As a friendly amendment.
Point of information, the ESSA task force does not have the authority to bring something to, OSSI needs to bring a proposal to us under our legal statute. The ESSA task force or us ourselves can't bring agenda items to us, so it would have to come through OSSI. The ESSA task force could bring it to OSSI and to the board, but ultimately for us to have a resolution and move it forward, would it not need to come from OSSI directly?
So, Madam President, if I can try to clarify. All right, so if the first reference to OSSI is changed, then the ESSA task force would be bringing a proposal or recommendations to the state board for consideration, and then the way that it reads would allow, then that recommendation would allow sufficient time for the state board and OSSI to discuss and agree on a proposal, which would be the final. So the task forces can bring recommendations to the board, but not as full policy proposals.
And then OSSI would need to bring a policy proposal to us.
Correct.
Following that.
Correct.
So why,
So then, sorry, so I believe then the current request is for that to be accepted as a friendly amendment, which would require the consent of the mover of the amendment and the second.
So let me just say this. If the point of the proposal is that the State Board of Ed should first hear from the task force, I'm all for that. And I would definitely consider that as a friendly amendment. But in the end, as Board Member Weedon has said, the proposal must come from OSSE. So if this works, we could say something like, be it further resolved that the ESSA task force bring to OSSE and the State Board of Ed a proposal for including teacher turnover in the 2019 report card by, say, November 2018, and that OSSE bring to the SBOE a proposal for this by, December or January 2019, I would be happy with that. I'm very amenable and very welcoming of having the ESSA task force be the initial group that offers a proposal, but we can do that without a resolution. I'm happy to put it in a resolution, but what I want to be sure of is that we're on the record saying we do want a proposal from OSSE that addresses the teacher turnover issue in time for us to put it into the December 2019 report card. That is, if I'm counting right, 22 months from now, or 18 months from now. Somebody else do the arithmetic, but yeah.
So the one point of clarification, the state board does not have the authority to require a proposal from OSSE. So we can put this language in, but it would not be binding on OSSE.
Right.
Just to be clear.
I mean, if OSSE wants to refuse to acknowledge what the state board has asked in a resolution, I guess they could do that for any resolution that we pass. I don't know. I mean, we're conveying to OSSE that our approval of this report card is contingent on an agreement that they would bring to us language for the next report card that would include this.
I don't believe the state board has the authority to impose a condition like that on OSSE.
I don't think we can.
Like I say, OSSE could ignore, well, then I would ask the executive director, what can we ask OSSE to do? We would like for this to be in the proposal. So, I mean, one option is simply to vote down this report card. Another is to ask that they work with us to propose something that there's a very strong belief in. So what would you propose?
The executive director does not have the ability to propose. I'd object to that.
Okay.
And I'd like board members to start talking to each other about the actual issues and about the motions that are on the table, Madam President.
All right, so we have motion 2, do we do them together?
It's 3
One
and
at a time?
4.
3 and 4?
So we have to
But
friendly part first.
Madam President?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I think he just spoke with you about the amendment, the friendly amendment.
So to clarify
Clarify.
with the maker of the motion on the amendment, do you accept the friendly amendment to change the amendment 4 to read, be it further resolved that the ESSA task force bring to the SBOE a proposal for including teacher turnover in the 2019 report card by December 2018, thus allowing sufficient time for the SBOE and OSSE to discuss and agree on a proposal?
I would accept it as friendly as an addition, but I would not accept it as friendly as a replacement. I would accept it as friendly to ask the ESSA task force to bring to the State Board of Ed a proposal. In addition, I want to make sure that in the resolution we're clear that we would like for OSSE to bring us a proposal on teacher turnover for inclusion in the December 2019 report card. 2 separate steps.
So
And if Board Member Woodruff would accept, is interested in that, I would be very happy to accept her amendment in addition to what's already in the amendment.
We ready to vote?
Dr. Woodruff, the proposal would be to add the wording, be it further resolved that the ESSA task force bring to the SBOE a proposal for including teacher turnover in the 2019 report card and require that OSSI
We can't use the word require.
bring that.
And that OSSI bring to the SBO, so bring to the SBOE a proposal on the same topic by December 2018, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd also be happy to, you know, fiddle with the months, if that made any difference.
I have a problem with the word require. No.
I'm sorry, would have to rule that amendment out of order. The state board cannot require OSSI
They-
to propose a proposal like this.
As I understand what you're saying, there's really nothing in our resolution that would require OSSI to do anything. Our resolution is a statement of our resolve. It is a statement of what we hope and ask for, and that's what we would be asking for. It is our means by which we can communicate to OSSI a very important desire on behalf of the board for what should be included in the subsequent report card.
If we change the word require to ask,
I don't have the word require.
It just says resolve that OSSI bring to the proposal.
It's the same language that's in all of the other,
My suggestion would be that we include the word that is in our statute advises OSSI to bring a proposal, which would bring us in line with, I believe, what is in our statutory authority. But I can't speak to the direct policy implications.
I don't understand. I don't understand why our resolution can't say what we hope OSSI will do. Other resolves say that we resolve that OSSI will support further inquiry. We're saying that they will do that. We are resolving that they will convene stakeholders, that they will facilitate conversations. I don't see why we can't say that we resolve that they will bring us a proposal on a particular item of great interest.
I have a comment. I understand we want something, we want OSSI to address this just like we're addressing it and move it forward. However, again, there's a time frame that goes into this to make sure that we can gather the data. So yes, it's important that ESSA task force is involved because we all agreed that ESSA task force would exist for the purpose of doing such matters. Also, OSSI sits on that task force, so they're involved. It's not like they're this entity that's out there and they're not involved from the beginning. They are. The question is, I do agree, instead of OSSI, it should be ESSA. I'm more concerned at the fact that we give them and give the task force a window to make sure that we're reporting accurately. That is so important. So what?
okay,
Madam President, I'm still unclear. But I'm not totally there on the amendment because somehow or another I'd like the task force to lead this process. I'm not opposed to the request, but I have to ask, why do we have committees and task forces if we're not going to allow them to do their work? So that's just my thought on it. And
let me
if
just-
I can get some clarity from the chairman of the task force committee and the offerer of this the amendment, if that's through the president, if that's.
Ms. Wattenberg's one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would propose to meet Mr. Jones's concern, the following amendment, which picks up on Board Member Woodruff's request. So it would read, be it further resolved that the ESSA task force bring to the State Board of Education a proposal regarding teacher turnover for the 2019 report card by December 2018, and that OSSI bring to the SBOE a proposal for including teacher turnover in the 2019 report card by February 2019, thus allowing sufficient time for the SBOE and OSSI to discuss and agree on a proposal. So in other words, there's 2 years between, there's a full year between now and when we would get that proposal, a full year for OSSI to discuss it, for the task force to discuss it, for the research to be done, for the wrinkles to be worked out, and so on. That's a long time for a data set that already exists. And it would allow a couple of months for a back and forth between the task force and OSSI and the board. So that would be my proposal, which would assure that the task force took the lead on this and that the state board had ample time to discuss it with the task force.
I'd object. We're on the gentlewoman from Ward 4's friendly amendment at the moment. We're not contemplating new amendments at the moment. So we need to dispose of Dr. Woodruff's amendment, or we need to dispose of both and start fresh. I'm really frustrated at this conversation. We have, and I include myself in my frustration. We've been sitting here for a half hour talking about made-up dates for requiring OSSI or asking OSSI to come to us with that have no basis in fact, no basis in anything but a desire to have something change. The teacher data and teacher quality and teacher qualification has evolved mightily since OSSI first proposed it, when they were just going to say if a teacher had 1 year of experience or less than 1 year of experience. Now we have bands of 1, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, and 10 plus years of experience in teaching. That is real data that has real meaning and is backed up by research. Putting more data that I have not heard as backed up by research in any way is a bad use of this time. We've got major problems in our schools. We've just lost a deputy mayor and a chancellor based on these major problems in our schools. And we are now spending a bunch of time not focusing on any of that, but rather having a dialogue about what somebody might want. I'd like to call the question on all of these amendments and move forward, please.
Call the question.
Yes, so the motion has been called. Excuse me. There's no debate, but a second is needed to call the question.
Second.
The motion is on approval of amendments 3 and 4 by Ms. Wattenberg.
Point of order. Have we disposed of Dr. Woodruff's amendment?
In the opinion of the parliamentarian, the friendly amendment was rejected by Ms. Wattenberg.
Did she?
Thank you.
I'm willing to adapt it. I mean, as I said, I'm willing
It's
to accept
accepted or
it.
not.
'Cause
Those
it
are the
called for
options, I believe,
question.
on this amendment.
It called for the question, so
Call the roll.
So
that's,
the motion is on on approval of amendments 3 and 4 offered by Ms. Wattenberg. Ms. Williams,
Nay.
Mr. Jacobson,
Nay.
Ms. Carter,
Nay.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan. No. Ms. Wattenberg,
Yay.
Ms. Woodruff,
No.
Mr. Jones,
abstain.
Mr. Weedon,
Abstain.
Mr. Batchelor, Ms. Rhodes,
No.
Ms. Robinson, Ms. Robinson,
Abstain.
Abstain.
Madam President, the motion fails.
All right, so then we vote on. Any additional amendments?
Yeah. The first amendment on line 35. So should I go ahead and move it? On line 35, insert at the end of the clause the words, quote, provided that all schools, public and public charter, are required to respond to all the content categories. And the purpose of that is just to make sure that for each question, both sectors are equally required to provide information.
So Amendment 1.
Is there a second? Discussion?
This is Amendment 1. Right.
Yeah, Joe.
So
Weedon.
I have a concern that we do not have the authority as a board to require any agency in the city to respond to our request for information, which, while a significant issue that we need to look at in the context of the oversight and accountability of our educational institutions, gives me cause that we may be overstepping if we move forward with this amendment. While I 100% agree with it in spirit, I question whether or not we have the authority to move forward, so I'd like the parliamentarian to rule on that.
No further discussion?
There's a question asked of me. So
Okay.
sorry. So in response to the point of parliamentary inquiry, I believe that the board would have the authority in its approval to list that all schools, public and public charter, are required to respond, because that is actually part of the requirement from ESSA that all public schools participate in the state report card system. So I believe it would be allowable for the state board to do so.
Let's call the question.
Voice vote or roll call?
Roll call.
Motion is on approval of amendment number 1 by Ms. Wattenberg to insert at the end of line 35, provided that all schools, public and public charter, are required to respond to all of the content categories. Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams. Mr. Jacobson. Aye. Ms. Carter.
Nay.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan. Ms. Wattenberg.
Aye.
Dr. Woodruff.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Weedon.
Aye.
Mr. Batchelor. Aye. Ms. Rhodes.
Abstain.
Ms. Robinson.
Abstain.
Madam President, the amendment is approved.
Okay. Are there any additional amendments?
I'll hold the other one for another time.
And we can vote on the resolution. Seeing no further discussion, I'd like to call the question. The motion is on adoption of Resolution 18-3. All in favor? Or you will do roll call? All in favor?
Roll call, please.
Roll call?
The motion is on approval of SR 18-3. President Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson. Aye. Ms. Carter.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan. Aye. Ms. Wattenberg.
Abstain.
Dr. Woodruff.
Aye.
Mr. Jones. Aye. Mr. Weedon.
Aye.
Mr. Batchelor. Aye. Ms. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Robinson.
Aye.
Madam President, the resolution is approved.
Thank you. Where are we now?
Madam President,
Yes.
hold on 1 second.
Our next item on the agenda was DPR. Unfortunately, they had to leave, so we'll bring them back at a later date to do their presentation. So there's no further business on the table. I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I would just ask the chair's indulgence for colleagues who might want to speak to the upheaval in the past couple of weeks in our education system. I know it is out of the ordinary, but we are the only elected body in this city that deals specifically with education-related matters. We do have a little bit of unexpected time, and I think it would behoove us to have a short discussion of perhaps no more than 2 minutes per person, if you don't object. If you do, I completely understand.
I think that should be a board decision.
Was that a motion?
Yeah, is that a motion?
Second.
I mean,
Put it in
yes,
motion.
I'd like to amend the agenda to allow each board member up to 2 minutes to speak on education-related matters in the District of Columbia.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. I guess no, Ms. Robinson, no? Come back to you if, yeah, okay. Ms. Carter?
I know that we have had a series of different events that have plagued our school system over the past several months, including and not limited to the recent incident that happened with our own chancellor, causing the need for him to resign yesterday. My statement on the matter is this: while I can understand that any parent who wants the best for his or her child, I completely understand every single parent wanting their child to be in the very best school, to have the best instances with their education. But the way Chancellor Wilson went about doing so was incredibly wrong. No one in this city is above the rules, and he was fully aware of the correct process and policies concerning transferring students in this school. In fact, he wrote the policies and helped to put them in place. When we have leaders and we have public servants who want to get preferential treatment and they feel like they can circumvent the laws that they set for others, I don't believe that they are serving the city and especially our children to the best of their ability. We, as public servants, need to realize the second word in that title is serve. We are there to serve others, not serve ourselves. Therefore, regarding not just this, but the other incidences we've seen, including the graduation scandals, I believe that we need to have more transparency across DCPS and our schools in general. I think we need to address these failures head on, and that we need to have more oversight and can make sure that our students and our government is serving and working for the people of the District of Columbia in the best manner possible. Thank you.
Ms. Wattenberg?
Can we go in order? Oh, we're going, okay, well, so I understand that the chancellor did the wrong thing, and in so doing, he broke the trust with the people he was serving, and that really made it impossible for him to do the job he needed to do, and he resigned, and I appreciate that he did so quickly so that we could move forward. That said, I think he was trying to do some good things, and I wish him and his family very well. I also think, most importantly, and this is what I was saying during this whole thing, is whether he resigned or whether he didn't resign, our system has some terrific problems that need to be addressed that were most recently exposed in the graduation scandal, but they were also exposed last year during the suspension scandal. There have been testing issues. There have been data issues. We have a lot of issues. And that's really what we need to deal with. And I don't think we should move quickly to make a replacement. I think there needs to be a serious community-wide conversation about where we're going, what has worked and what has not worked under the previous superintendents. And I want to read a statement from my own councilwoman, Mary Che, who I think got it exactly right. She talked about, regardless of what happened with him, that we are dealing with the same that we are dealing with a flawed system that has led us to graduating students who are not at all ready for college or careers, and in some cases are functionally illiterate, a continued and even widening achievement gap, demoralized teachers, and one of the highest teacher turnover rates in the nation. Social promotions, a loss of confidence in honest and truthful reporting, top-down administration with little room for creativity and flexibility, and a fixation on numbers rather than real educational achievement. We need to take time to clarify what we need to do and then look for the leadership team that will move us forward. It won't do to just find another person, interim or permanent, who will carry on the same failed and flawed policies. On a journey, it is not always clear when or where you've made a wrong turn, but then the evidence piles up that you are going in the wrong direction. That's the case with our school system now. We need a new direction and a new set of leaders to move us in that direction.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, colleagues, for allowing a very brief dialogue on this. I'm sorry she left. I wanted to take a moment to praise the stability and the leadership of our superintendent, Hansel Kang. We do not always agree with the superintendent. We do not always see things from the same side of we certainly disagree from time to time, but she now more than ever needs to be the stabilizing force along with this body in education in the District of Columbia. And I want to reiterate my support for Superintendent Kang and her team. Moving to the broader issue of governance and accountability, I had a small group of parents and civic leaders to my home last night. I'd planned that on Saturday in the wake of the unfolding problems with the chancellor and the deputy mayor. And though he resigned, we still held the conversation, and it was an important one. Families in Ward 2 in particular don't feel they have a real voice in education. I expressed my frustration earlier this evening, and part of that frustration was born of the fact that my executive director and my colleague from Ward 6 pointed out that we lack the authority to require agencies to act, and we lack the authority to represent our constituents, and we lack the authority to create policy. We only have the authority to approve, or as my colleague from Ward 3 said, not approve policies that are presented to us. There are flaws in our system. I'm not ready to abandon mayoral control, but I think this is a point in our system where we need to take some serious look at the accountability and governance system, make sure our parents have a voice, a true voice, and a true advocates that are respected and consulted in the education space. And with that, I would yield my time. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. Earlier, I was having a discussion or a conversation with my colleague from Ward 6 in reference to the lottery and the My School lottery process. I believe in public education. But as I often tell my constituents in Ward 5 and anyone who will listen, families of affluence and influence will always educate their children. We're here to protect the families that have neither. I think what the chancellor did was exercise his influence to make a decision, which was the wrong decision. It's kind of difficult to totally condemn him because we only get one opportunity to educate our children. But on the other hand, we must follow the rules. Because I think of the families that don't have affluence or influence, where they can't call anyone. I'm going through the process now of choosing a high school for my daughter. And for full disclosure, yes, we've applied for independent schools. She's been accepted to one of them. But I so much want her to go to one of our DC public schools. And today we had our interviews at Banneker. A couple of weeks ago, we tested at School Without Walls. But what I realized in this process so far is we have so few options of high quality seats for families. And that's what I'm getting out of all of this. We need to hasten school reform, no matter what the governance structure is. We all owe it to the families that don't have access to call someone and make things happen. So hopefully we can continue the discussion among the board and all the stakeholders, whether they have families or not. Thank you, Madam President.
I couldn't have said it better than my colleague from Ward 5, Mr. Jones, and I echo his comments, and I echo the comments from Mr. Jacobson as well. Now is not the time to end mayoral control, but we do need to revisit oversight and ensure that our school leaders, our school systems, our individual schools are held accountable and held to a high standard. I'm not going to rehash and pile on to any individual thing, with the exception of we need to use this opportunity as policymakers to explore our neighborhood schools and ensure that our by right schools have the resources to serve each and every student that walks through their doors. If there is nothing else that comes from this, it is clearly an indictment that some of our schools do not have the ability to serve all students, and that is 100% unacceptable in a school with a by right in a city with a by right system. So we need to roll up our sleeves, work with our partners in education across the city, and ensure that every student gets a high quality education. And I think it's clear that that is not currently the case, and I'm not okay with that.
Thank you. Having an opportunity to be the last to speak doesn't mean that I need to say over again what I've heard my colleagues say, because I'm in total agreement as a parent with an 8th grader and a 12th grader. I walk in their school and realize that what makes DC what it is that we do have some form of choice, because it would have been so easy to put them in a private school. But I also knew that I had the means to do that. And as a council member, I felt it was really important for me to have the children in public school so that I can be closer to what I believe in, that every single child in the District of Columbia should have the same opportunity that my children have. And that it saddens me that not every school offers that. It saddens me that we create policy and yet it's difficult for some of us to follow it, because in following it, it causes us to sometimes put people we love in predicaments that we don't want them in. And I appreciate the fact that there are DCPS schools in my neighborhood. If they were
I want to say if they are really good schools compared to what they were 25 years ago. And if my children were 5, 6, and 7, I would be doing the walkability. So I think it's important to keep in mind that we are making progress, but in that progress, we need to make sure that we're including every single school, and that dwelling on what has happened to the chancellor or to a DCPS is not where we should go. Thank you.
Actually, I do. Thank you, Madam President. Being a student in DCPS, I've only actually been in DCPS for 3 years. I moved here from North Carolina. I didn't really know anything about the lottery system. I didn't really understand what was the difference between the charter and public school, because this was my first time picking the difference, and I was actually going to go to Thurgood Marshall because I lived down the street in Ward 8 because we didn't have any housing. And I didn't like the school because I was going to have to take my whole ninth grade year over again. So I decided not to go. So I ended up going to a school near my grandmother's house, and it was actually the school I go to now, which is H.D. Woodson. And I'm glad I went there, otherwise I wouldn't have met Ms. Fuchs or been here with you guys. But since then, I have always perceived Wilson, Banneker, School Without Walls as one of the best schools in DCPS. And although I don't choose to go to those schools, I would choose to make the school that I go to better instead of moving to a different one. So although all schools may not be equal or may not be equal soon, I think that maybe it might not be now, but maybe helping those schools that aren't in the same position as Wilson, who's like maybe, I guess, one of the best academic schools in sports for me too, schools. It's saddening though, because when I'm walking through the schools today, I'm looking at the students who are intelligent, who are smart, but are graded on the way that they act and their behavior, and although that it's bad, most days, yes, it is. But they're smart. They're very, very smart kids, and we're not perceived as a school that's going to have that kind of recognition like Wilson, and we're not perceived as a good school. And I never knew that when I went there, and I do know that now. And I still perceive it as a good school compared to Wilson, because this is a school that I have made as my home. But I basically say this to say is all schools aren't going to be the same. All schools aren't going to be schools like Wilson, and all schools aren't going to be schools like School Without Walls, and all schools aren't going to be like H.D. Woodson. But maybe, just maybe, we can hopefully have some similarity throughout all those schools so that we're all getting 1300s on our SAT, so that we're all having equal opportunities, that we're all having something to help us through. Because, quite frankly, I was able to go to Syracuse University this past summer, and I did a summer college, and when I tell you, I almost cried every night because I felt like I wasn't ready, despite how hard I was working the last 2 years. It was saddening, and I kept thinking maybe if I went to Wilson, I would have been ready. But in our reality, it's not the school that I go to. It's those who teach in the school and those who care about the school that can make it a better school for me. So if you care about the schools there are in those lower wards and not just in the higher wards, is how I perceive it, then I think that maybe in a couple years they'll get better. So that's all I really have to say. I'll be brief, but I did want to at least say something to have the student perspective heard. I want to start by saying that in DCPS especially, I can't really speak for charter schools because I've never gone to a charter school, but in DCPS currently, there are some things that are working, but we know there's a lot that can be improved. And I think that at this point, a total overhaul for the system would just set everything back, set the students back. And I think that a lot of people are looking at this as closed-minded, and we need to look at this from
asset mindset to determine what would be at the best for students, because a lot of people who are making the decisions aren't really stepping inside the schools to see what happens, to see what will benefit them. And I think it's just time to be realistic about the challenges that we are facing as a school system, and at least have it so every student that walks in the school feels that they have at least a fighting chance from equity, not necessarily equality, because I don't think we'll ever have that, but at least be equitable to every student, so they at least believe that when they walk into school, they don't just shut down, but they think they have a fighting chance with students from other wards. Because I can speak for Ballou especially, we have a major lack of resources from other schools. I'm in an AP class where instead of being able to read from our books, we have to print books from offline, because we don't have, I guess, the money, or we don't have the resources to get books. And I just think that as a school district, we just need to stop being closed-minded and to start hearing from more students, because in the end, that's who it's going to affect. Thank you.
Very elegant. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And since I started this, I will just reiterate that I hope that we learn, as a city, we learn from this event, and we will have this will prompt some difficult conversations about equity and equality that are long overdue in the District of Columbia. And we've now turned our attention and our energies to fixing the system and correcting it and making sure that all our students graduate ready for college, career, and beyond. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting is adjourned.